Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at another short Latin story. Now this is called The Death of Antony, and it's talking about Mark Antony, Cleopatra, and their ultimate demise, and it comes from the Latin reader for the lower forms in schools by H.J. Hardy. So we've used this series before. These are his introductory stories. Like I've said before, what he's calling more beginner stories, I would probably peg it more of an intermediate level, somewhere around Latin 3 maybe, 2 or 3, depending on where your program goes. So if you're a teacher using this, I would kind of peg it somewhere in that range. If you're a student just trying to learn and practice, there might be a little bit in here that's a little bit confusing if you're just starting out your Latin career. So it might be better if you've kind of studied it for a few years or taken a couple classes to really understand what's happening. But either way, it's a really good chance to practice by reading a story that has to do with history, right? So it is true, and it gives you a little bit of cultural and historical context. Okay, so what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to read the story to you in Latin, then we're going to pause the video, and I'm going to tell you to go back and translate it or read it on your own. Okay. So what I encourage you to do is what we call the read and reread method, where you read it once, you write down any vocab, any grammar, anything you don't understand. You look all those things up after you're done reading, and then you go back and read it a second, third, fourth time, as many times as you need to, until you're able to read this without a dictionary or any grammar help. If you can do that, you know that you're in a pretty good place. Okay, so we'll start there. Then after I've paused the video, I'll walk you through how to translate it. So the story looks like this. You have Antonius ingens bellum civile commovit, cogente uxore Cleopatra, regina Aegypti, dum cupiditate muliebri opta etiam in urbe regnare. Victus est ab Augusto navali pugna clara et illustri apud actium, qui locus in Epiro est, ex qua fugit in Aegyptum, et desperatis rebus cum omnes ad Augustum transirent, ipse se intereme. Cleopatra sibi aspidem admissit, et veneno eius extincta est. Aegyptus per Octavianum Augustum imperio Romano adiecta est. Praepositusque ei on Cornelius Gallus hunc primum Aegyptus Romanum judicem habuit. So we're going to pause the video there. Again, if you want to, if that's your first time doing this, go back, do the read and reread method, read it on your own, read it aloud, whatever you have to do to feel comfortable with it, and then move forward as we walk through the translation. And hopefully, as long as your translation is pretty close to mine, doesn't have to be perfect, you can feel that you're in a pretty good place with it. So the first line starts like this. You have Antony talking about Mark Antony. He started a huge civil war, right? So commovit, he moved or he started a huge civil war. And then you have this phrase, cogente uxori Cleopatra. So it's by the urging, the cogente, the urging of his wife or from his wife Cleopatra, the regina Aegypti, the queen of Egypt. Okay. Then you have since she, optat, she wished, from cupiditate muliebri, means something like desire, almost like womanly or feminine desire. I'm not entirely sure what Hardy meant by that, but again, her desire basically to also rule regnare in the city. So it's saying that Antony is urged by Cleopatra to start this war so that they can rule together. Okay. Then you have Victus Est. She's saying he was conquered by Augustus in a famous and illustrious. So a clara et illustri. So famous and illustrious is pretty close, right? There's a couple different ways you could do that, but it's a pugna nawali, right? A pugna, a battle, and it's a nawali, a naval battle. So this famous naval battle near Actium, right? Apud Actium. And it's Actium, which is located in Epirus, right? Which is the west coast of Greece, if I remember correctly. But that's where they're fighting. And it's located in Epirus, from where he fled to Egypt. Okay, so he loses the battle and he flees to Egypt. Right, you can see a famous painting of it below. And desperatis rebus, so despairing the sort of situation, despairing of everything, you might say, when all were crossing over to Augustus. Now, the crossing over here is talking about switching sides, right? So a lot of it's a civil war, so it's Romans versus Romans, and after this battle, everyone is kind of going to Augustus' side, realizing that he's going to win. And again, at this point, Augustus is Octavian, right? He hasn't earned the honorific title Augustus yet. But when everyone, since everyone is crossing over to Augustus, he ipse himself, right? He himself killed himself. So another way to say this is he killed himself, inter remit se. So Antony commits suicide, after the Battle of Actium. Then you have Cleopatra, right? She now this phrase, she admissit sibi, you can translate it, she received to herself. It means she like basically brought to herself and put on her own body an aspidem, an asp, which is a poisonous snake. So she takes a snake and kind of brings it to herself, right, to bite her. And she extincta est. She was killed by its venom, veneno eos. So she basically took the snake, had it bite her, and the venom kills her. Okay. So you might have seen that before. That's the sort of famous ending of Antony and Cleopatra. And again, I'd encourage you to go look this up if you've never heard this story before. Then you have Egypt, adjecta est. It was added to the Imperio Romano, to the Roman Empire by Octavian Augustus, right, or through Octavian Augustus. So again, Octavian is the successor of Julius Caesar, right? His nephew, if I remember right, and he gets the title Augustus later on. So we usually think of him as Augustus, but he's called Octavian, right? That's his name. And so it was added to the emperor, to the empire rather. And Cornelius Gallus, right, is this famous, well-known Roman, because we know of this. He was put in command, you could say, of it, right? So that's kind of what's going on with the praepositus A, right? He was put in command of it, so he's the governor. Then you have this, right? Hunc primum. So this was the first time, you might say, hunc primum. This was the first, or the first time that Egypt, Aegyptus, had a judicem Romanum, a Roman judge or governor, right? It means judge. I think it is probably best suited more like governor here, right? So this was the first time that Egypt was under Roman rule. So this is a good little way to transition into some Roman history, learn about the Battle of Actium. Roman Egypt is a really, really important part of Roman history. So it's worth looking into. Julius Caesar had been there. Octavian or Augustus, takes it over and adds it to the empire. You want to look at all this up because it's really important to Roman history, not only in the moment but moving forward too. So it's just a little story to kind of get you cooking again and see something a little different. Maybe it's a nice break from your textbook. But if you have any questions at all or anything about the story, put them in the comments below. Otherwise, keep practicing. Like I said, do the read and reread method. And the more you read through this and practice this, the easier it should get. Good luck.